Hey, David Wood here, and welcome to my Extra Mile. Today's show is incredible. If you're in a romantic relationship or you want to be, then you got to listen to this show for the ultimate romantic relationship formula. Also, I want to call out our comment winner, Susan Murphy. She said, thank you so much for this. She said, I loved listening. She said, this is great for a network marketer and also a human being, right? Which is awesome. She said, goosebumps and tears. Great. So thank you, Susan. Well done. And you know what to do. Push subscribe, push the like button. It really helps with the algorithms, and also get involved with the conversation because I love reading them. I love answering them. And please enjoy the incredible Beth Hanishewski. Beth, welcome back.
Thank you.
My goodness, you're the most prolific of my guests. This is now our fourth show. And look, let's get straight into it because we've talked about this relationship formula. We've hinted at it on all three shows.
Yeah.
And I know that, we can look at it, some of the three greatest mistakes that people make, even well-intentioned, even people who have beautiful relationships, but these three sort of very common mistakes. So why don't we start there and let's jump into this formula. Now, I will give two caveats. One is we are on Zoom, so if you're listening to this as a podcast, the sound quality may not be great, but the content's going to be awesome. So listen to the content. This is happening during COVID-19. We may not focus on that, but if we do, just make it relatable to what's happening for you in today's world. Whatever's going on for you, use the same principles today. It's not specifically about COVID. Beth, let's go there. Three great mistakes.
Okay. Yeah. And you're right. I think that almost every relationship that is struggling makes one, two, or all three of these mistakes. And you might not even be aware you're making it. And I certainly know I wasn't aware of the mistakes I was making it of my relationship when I first learned it. So as I go through with it, just again, remember to give yourself some compassion if you've been doing this unconsciously in your own relationship.
And Beth, to that person, whoever, if you're there right now, the fact you're listening to this tells me a lot. The fact you're listening, you've chosen to push play on a relationship podcast or show. It tells me a lot. It tells me that you want something and you're willing to do some work to discover it. So really celebrate the fact you're listening. And even if you say, oh my gosh, I do that all the time, we're not giving you this as a broom to beat yourself with. We're giving you this as a strategy to be able to navigate and have more succulent and beautiful relationships.
Great. Perfect. Okay. So whenever I teach this formula, I love to make it personal and practical. So for everybody who's listening at home, I actually want you to pick somebody right now that you are struggling with in your relationship with them. That they're just, they might be your favorite person, but they're really bugging you. Or they might be your least favorite person that you've been mad at for a long time. But I just want you to pick somebody that if you could have a better relationship with this person, you would. And I don't care what the relationship could be, your mother, could be your brother, could be your spouse, could you be your husband, could be your husband. It doesn't matter. I just want you to pick somebody that you would love for this to be better. And as I go through the formula, I want you we're going to come check back on and see if these mistakes apply to the relationship you have with this person. Okay.
All right. So for the perfectionist amongst you, just write down a name right now.
Yeah.
Don't get hung up because you're like, oh, I can't think. Let me and you're going to spend half the time trying to think of someone.
Pick a name right now, write their name down.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to report back, but write their name, whatever it is. Okay. And then, so here's mistake number one. So mistake number one is what I call living in the dark. That's the first mistake I see people making. And this relates to the energy that you run in your relationship with this person. So when I say energy, so many people are like, oh, like, what do you mean? Are you all woo woo? Or, are you talking about feng shui? Or, what kind of energy, emotional energy? And of course, I'm talking about the masculine and feminine. energies in a relationship. And just to be clear, masculine and feminine are not men and women. Mm-hmm. Masculine and feminine are groups of characteristics that sort of embody energy that we associate as being either masculine or feminine. And both men and women, so men and women are groups of people. Masculine and feminine are groups of characteristics. And they really apply to all of us.
And if we look at it right now, we see, and all of us can picture somebody who's a man who runs a lot of what we consider to be or more feminine energy, right? Or feminine characteristics. And there's a lot of women, and especially today, I see a lot of women who are very, very masculine so that's what we're talking about, right? So
exactly. And so, if you're listening to this, or maybe you're watching this, I'm going to do a little visual. If you're not watching this, here's a little fancy chart. Ready? That's the big chart around the first mistake.
Let me explain it for the people who can't see. It's just a cross on a sheet of paper. Just a cross. Big cross. So 4 boxes, 4 quadrants.
4 boxes. And that relates all to the energy. So when you think of masculine and feminine energy, again, each one of those has 2 different variations. So there's what we call positive masculine energy or negative masculine energy. You might call it the light, the dark, the shadow. However you want to, energies we love less. It doesn't matter the category, but just make sure that you have a distinction of each for the masculine and the feminine. That's sort of a positive and a not so positive attributes. So characteristics are things like, for example, logical. Right? When you think of logical, that's a very masculine energy. And that's a very positive energy, and a feminine sort of equivalent or to logical is more feminine, to be more emotional. And lots of women think that, for example, and they've been accused of being too emotional, right? But it's not true. Being emotional is not a negative or a dark or shadow energy. It's when you're over emotional. I'm just waiting for Dave to weigh in on this. When you're kind of hysterical.
Not that you know anything about being over emotional.
I don't know if you've ever seen me hysterical.
Go back to show number 1.
Completely irrational.
Go back to show number 1 where she talks about us fighting.
Yes, exactly. There was maybe this one time where
you were emotional.
Extremely emotional. No, but hysterical is the shadow energy on the feminine, when you're completely have lost your mind, right? When you're, obviously that's a shadow, and that would go into that quadrant. Now, if you don't feel anything and you're completely shut down, you're devoid of emotion, then that's actually closed, which is on the shadow of the masculine. So there's 4 kind of different ways of looking at how we see the world: logical, emotional, hysterical, closed. So even those 4, you think about, okay, now come back to your person, the person that you put on the piece of paper. What kind of energy do you run around them? Are you positive? Are you uplifted? Are you inspired? Are you happy? Are you loyal? Are you loving? What energy are you at? Does it feel more masculine or feminine? And does it feel more positive, or does it feel more negative? That's very telling, because often when we're in a challenged relationship with somebody, we're not in the positive, in the energy spectrum. And we tend to be, again, back to the reactive, right? We tend to be reacting to them. So let's say they're kind of cranky and chippy, as we've been saying. They're not in a great space. They're, as we might call, hard to love right now. These
are little Bethisms.
Hard to love, little hard to love. A little prickly. Let's say your person is extremely hard to love. What happens often is we have a relationship with someone who's hard to love, and we meet them there at that hard to love place. So they're all grumpy and bitchy, or terrible, or whatever, just in a miserable victim, like I hate the world, whatever. They're in the dark place, and we join them there. We go to the dark place. We become bitchy and grumpy, and we bicker and we fight and we judge and we do all those things that are in a very low negative energy. and that's where lots of blame comes up, and I certainly in my own relationship, when my husband and I were struggling, I would blame him for my bitchiness. I'm like, well, I wouldn't be bitchy if you were nicer. Right? I'll totally change the
We
minute
all we all knew the truth. Those of us observing.
that, but that's what we do. We think, well, it's not me, it's them. And so we often will blame the person, for our reactivity.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on this for people listening in, right? Especially if they're hiking or they're not writing anything down. But the masculine light, let's call it feminine light, masculine dark, feminine dark. We can run all of these energies. Whether you're a man or a woman, you can run all these energies.
Yes.
What I love about what you just said is if they go back to their person, is quite often that trigger person. Just even thinking about them sometimes can push some people back into their dark, right? Because they're dark thoughts. They start thinking negative thoughts. Immediately, you're thinking negative thoughts about someone. You're moving yourself from a light position into a darker position, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so what I love is that kind of just even the thought process. But what I also observe with people who do dive into other people's dark is sometimes it happens because of habit. Again, going back to, they're just so used to being there that as soon as they see that person, straight in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's the thing that I think is important to note, or as you are so beautifully illustrating right now, is that we get into these patterns with these people and that we struggle with, especially if we struggle them for a while, and they become like the kind of, let's say you have a friend. This is probably a bad example for me, but let's say you have a friend who's always late, for example.
Oh, that wouldn't be me, by the way. That would be her.
Yeah. Let's say you have a friend who's always late. And let's say it really bothers you. Like you think that is just so disrespectful. You have no integrity of my time. You're just a big jerk. And you're really building up a lot of resentment around this. And that person, and every time they're late, you're like, oh, I just so mad at them. And we tend to then be super reactive to someone who is always does this thing, versus let's say you have a friend who's always on time, who's late one day. Well, you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? You think, oh, something must have happened. Oh, they must, maybe they're in an accident. I should call a hospital. Like you're not mad at them when they show up. You're like, wow, what happened? But the person who's chronically does that thing, you're in it already with them. There's no grace.
You're anticipating it as well. You're actually expecting
You're anticipating it, right? And so that's an example of how quickly we can get into these energetic patterns with the people that, again, that have disappointed us or done, these patterns of negative behavior for us a lot. And so the biggest thing you can do, we'll get this at the very end, but might as well tell you the punchline now is we're going to invite you to change your energy. I'm going to invite you to change your energy, even though they're triggering you, even though they're grouchy, even though they're disappointed you, even though they're late.
Well, and I want to include another group in here. I've just been thinking about it as you're talking. Like we've talked this a lot, but if you're single, you can still be running, dark energy as a single person. So you're in a relationship with yourself.
Yes.
And so I want you, even if you're single right now, think, oh, this doesn't really count for me. Well, yes, it does. How often are you dipping into your feminine dark or masculine dark? All right. Yeah. I just think so. I think everyone should be listening right now, whether you're in a relationship or not. Right.
Agreed. Right. And you're right. The relationship you have with yourself is frankly the first place you should go, whether you're with someone or not, because you cannot actually I don't believe you can have a healthy relationship with another person if you have a really dysfunctional relationship with yourself. And we all have, moments where we're critical and whatever. And again, it's all degrees. How hard are you on yourself? How bitchy are you at you? You know what I mean? Like how hard do you judge yourself? That kind of thing. So you're right. I'm glad you brought that up. So that's the energy. I mean, again, we could go on, as you know, we've taught on full day workshops, weekend.
Oh yeah, listen, this
retreats.
This could be a 5-hour piece.
This is, we're just kind of skating over this, but because there's like probably 200 or 100 at least characteristics that we could kind of think about it. So if you want to do a little research on that and start thinking about typical characteristics that you would normally, and where do you associate them? And you can kind of just
Well, let's just give people a little bit of your wisdom. Give me 5 of each. Just so, like, we're talking about light feminine. What are 5 characteristics? Just so people can start.
Well, okay, well, we have emotional, spontaneous, I would say inspired, collaborative, and maybe nurturing.
Nurturing, yeah. And nurturing is a huge one. And then let's go straight to the 5 feminine dark.
Bitchy, whiny,
yeah,
manipulative, hysterical, submissive.
Submissive, yeah. And that's an interesting one, right? Isn't it? Because you think that the play on that can be very dangerous, right? To be that, right?
Yeah. I mean,
back to that. That's another.
It's a really dangerous spot, obviously, for women, and can really lead to being into abusive relationships, because you have lost your ability to even have a voice or be assertive and say, oh, that doesn't feel right. And you're maybe
very hard to move energies when you're in the
very hard if you are in a very oppressive relationship, like you're maybe, yeah.
Let's go to the masculine light energies.
Okay, so masculine light, well, we said like logical, competitive, focused, loyal, and one of my favorite masculine light, present.
Yeah.
Right? Just
that's
to be
sexy.
present.
That's the sexy one.
That's
and then let's go into the, well, again, you may even start the dark with the opposite of that, but so what's some of the dark masculine energies?
Well, like closed, we said closed, grumpy, controlling,
aggressive,
violent, or aggressive, and probably, and what would be another? I cannot think of 5. Mixing one really good one, but
and we'll come back to it. Sorry. But you get the point. I just want people to have a point now. So now you start to see that there's these 4 quadrants drawn out: dark, light, and we can run all of them. We can move around. But also, what I love about this was once you start putting this down on paper, and this is why it takes normally quite a long time to teach and train, is awareness is always that first step.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, if I can see myself and know, oh yeah, I'm running masculine dark right now, it's kind of a great way for me, a litmus test is, do I want to run masculine dark? And you know me, I don't like running masculine dark, but it can happen, right? So let's go on.
Okay. And so, and so I would just, one of the things before we move to the next one is sort of just think about where, again, it doesn't matter what gender you are, what gender you identify with even, is where do you feel most yourself? What quadrant? Like you said, you don't like in the masculine dark, you feel most yourself in the masculine light, right? I feel most myself in the feminine light, but it could be different for different people. So I want you to think about, where do you feel your best? Where do you feel your best? What energy feels the best on the light spectrum? And go there as often as you can, and especially with the person that you're struggling with.
Awesome. Can I ask you a question? This is actually something I don't think I've ever asked you before. But, when you just mentioned about...
You have my attention, because we've known each other for, as we know, like 30 years. So
you
haven't asked me a question in 30 years even.
Well, it's just because I think that, I always consider, people say, that word metrosexual or whatever. I feel very effeminate in some ways, but I feel immensely masculine, but I feel very, very feminine as well. So I was wondering about that line between the masculine and feminine light energies.
Yeah.
Whether, when I'm at my best and most connected to people, I would say that I'm probably running sort of on the line of a light masculine, light feminine sort of energy, because compassion and empathy and, and really being present, and sort of moving away from competition into collaboration. Collaboration is much more of a feminine energy than a masculine. So so my question really was, is that a place? Is the line a place? I've even taught on this, but I've never thought about it before. But is it a place?
I mean, I think again, we are all all four quadrants. We are always all four quadrants. And so there's nothing wrong with embodying, especially in the positive, both the masculine and feminine. We need both in our lives. We need that blend of us where, for both, again, whatever gender you identify with. However, I would say if you want to shift a relationship into like really, take it to a transformation level, I would pick one quadrant and really be in that quadrant around that person. Because the fluidity, it's just too easy then to just slip into all four quadrants when it's just to make it simple, for you, I would just be in that masculine, in that real warrior kind of place. You can still have your heart, because that's not going to go away, which is more your feminine.
Well, a warrior has a heart. I mean, a warrior by definition, right?
Yes, right? And so
example,
being a warrior doesn't mean you don't have any feelings or you're not compassionate, but it's more the energy that you're very, very clear, you're very methodical, you're very on purpose, it's just stronger. Do you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Which allows then your person, wherever quadrant they're in, to go to their home too. Sure. Does that make sense? So I do think ultimately you have one box that's really your home, and you can allow the fluidity of that in your life, of course. But if you really want to shift, it's like go to that one home and be strong there, because that's your best chance to invite your person. And this is especially true in relationships where there's not great sex. So let's talk about sex for a minute, because some of that is you need that polarity between the masculine and feminine to really create some charge. And if you're, if you're super fluid in that, it will throw that off for everybody.
Well, and if we give that a face, because
that could be a whole other call too.
That's a whole other call, but I think I'm going to write that one down. Sex. Yeah. But this idea of what's attractive, right? When a woman's running strong masculine energy, for me personally, I find it completely unattractive, right? I just don't. I mean, not that I love strong women, but when they're running masculine energy, or when I see a guy that's so sort of soft and decide, yes honey, and I can see that.
I don't know, what do you think?
I
don't know, you think, you choose.
And you see that the lack of attraction. This woman doesn't want you to be a wimp. She wants you to be a man, right? But with compassion and heart and presence. And we'll go through the formula, because once you hear the formula, you're going to really grasp how simple this is. I love all of your formulas, but this is such a simple formula. But visually, I think we're laying it down pretty well. But that sexual tension, that attraction, that you say, it's like that magnetism. But that polarity, think of polarity, that's that, when you think of when I think of it as the most beautiful sort of tension sexually, is a man and a woman. By the way, if that's not your gender, but energies.
Two partners.
Two partners, regardless of your sex, right? But this beautiful tension between them, it really, and the sexiest is, where when you're, or what I can tell personally, when I'm in that light masculine place and I look over at my partner, right? You can feel it as a crackle in the air. Right?
Exactly.
Right. So
100%. And you're right. And that's why I said that, when you said, can I be kind of in the line? And no, I guess is the answer.
Well, actually, as you were saying that, what came clear to me, is that really, when I'm in my light masculine anyway, the tendencies in the light masculine, a lot of those feminine energies are in the masculine anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because presence in collaboration, for when you're in a light masculine energy, you are collaborative, and competition is something you do for fun. You don't do to beat people, you do it to play. I mean, competition becomes much more playful, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on.
Well, and again, I don't want to take too much long on this, but it is triggering all these things for me too. And because I want to just talk about this in a relationship to business partners as well, right? Or in team, a lot of people who are in teams, and even thinking about when you and I ran events for a year together and stuff. And that would be an example of that masculine and feminine just in play all the time, right? Where you brought that strong container, the lot, like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, this is what we're going to get done. And I could bring the more creativity and just be in my feminine and just teach on my thing without thinking about the structure and how everything was going to work. And you're like, I got that, right? You just do this, you do this piece that you love, which is very inspiring to me when you go, just talk about what you love. And I didn't have to do any of the stuff I didn't love, which was joyful for me then. And you're like, I got systems, I got people, this is how, and that, again, that balance of the masculine and feminine, that dance can play out in business partnerships and friendships, where everybody's just really kind of in this flow, but in their own kind of zone, in their own lane, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much, very much.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the energy. So the whole formula, by the way, is like E plus V plus C equals H. So E is in energy, or E is in echo, if you like the alphanumeric, Echo Victor Charlie equals hotel, or energy. And then what do we do number 2 now, which is the mistake here, because we talked about mistakes. So mistake number 1 was living in the dark, right? Living in that dark energy. Mistake number 2 is unconsciously stealing the most important thing. So that's mistake number 2. We unconsciously steal the most important thing of our partner. And that's the V, which is the highest value.
Yeah.
Their highest value. And, I can't tell you how many times I ask, I'll ask audiences or clients these questions, like, what do you think the highest value of the masculine or the feminine? Again, back to wherever is your home identifier. And they'll always say things, oh, it's love, or it's family, or sex, or whatever. And it always surprises people when they actually hear. So of course,
it's also enlightening. When you disclose them, I want you to do it slowly and let it settle in their minds a little bit, because this is such an aha moment. If your goal is to have a really succulent relationship with your partner, or succulent relationship, if you test this formula out, it works so well. It works so well, and it is a practice. But let's go there. Let's surprise them.
Okay, so let's start with the feminine. So, and here's the thing, that if you're not driving or hiking, or you have a piece of paper in front of you, you might want to write these down, or later when you listen to this. But we often think of these things in all these areas. So the most important value of the feminine is safety. Safety. And here's where it's relevant. Physical safety, for example. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll share this with somebody who's in a heterosexual relationship, and they're like, well, my wife is totally safe. I never beat her. She's, I'm like, well, great. That's, yay. This is physical safety, but there's a lot of other safeties that most people don't realize. So there's physical safety, emotional safety, which is really, I would say 99% of people get that mixed up. There's intellectual safety, spiritual safety, sexual safety, all of those realms.
Financial safety as well.
Pardon me?
Financial safety as well.
Financial safety, yes. Right? So all of these things are important. And it's very unconscious. You might unintentionally, and I'm just going to give people a benefit of the doubt, they don't mean to take away the highest value of their partner, but they do it all the time. So like for men, they're like, oh, my wife's totally safe. She's totally safe with me. And I'll go, okay, well, let's just explore that. And I'll go, well, have you ever made fun of her in public? And they're like, well, yeah, all the time. Like, she's always the butt of my jokes, and you're like, well, that's not emotional safety, right? Or have you ever gotten really drunk and flirted with her friends? Oh, right. They're like, maybe once, and then they start to realize how easy it is. Have you ever made a promise and not kept it? And they're like, darn it, right? And they think, oh, I'm killing the safety thing because she's safe in my home. But there's so much, have you ever told your wife she couldn't buy something? you know, and gave her a little budget, or said she didn't have, you know, you couldn't give her access to your bank account, or there's a million things that we do, or we embarrass her while you're having sex and you make fun of her stomach rolls or something, like, and then she's like, oh my God, like, all that was, and then sex doesn't become safe. So there's so many ways that you can mess this up.
And to give the picture for everyone, you imagine, you know, if you want someone to move into the dark, right? We're talking about here, just for the first one, safety.
Yeah.
You know, you trip any one of those switches, and
Mhm.
you're gonna notice your partner move.
Energy.
That energy is gonna shift, and you know, even. And sometimes, like you say, you know, the butt of the jokes. If you've been drinking, you're saying this stuff. If you're really aware, you'll notice the physiology of your partner change as she becomes the butt of your jokes. And she may even laugh it off, but she's moving into that darker place, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's where, again, you know, that idea, and here's where you're right, the energy is completely related. So the minute the value is taken, the energy will change. And this is why sometimes you can, you know, you'll trip the formula to the negative. So you take away the energy, your partner who is normally maybe in the light, feeling all great, suddenly, whoa, you know, they're insulted, or they're hurt, or they're scared, or they're, you know, they feel wounded by something you've done around in the safety realm. You're right. They will move. They will move either to, might move masculine, dark, or light, and be super assertive and say, hey, dude, that's offside, right? You know, or they might be less light about it. And there might be like, they might become submissive or hysterical or closed, or they'll pull away from you, or they'll, again, you will notice, as you said, it's huge. So yeah, that's safety. And here's the thing, you know, well, I'll say that after, actually. No, I might as well say it now, since I've thought in my head. But, you know, if you're not sure, if you create safety, so let's say if you're dealing with a person, whether, again, it could be an intimate relationship, could be a friendship, could be a business partner, could be your mother, and you could even just ask them that question, which will seem weird because it's not a kind of question we normally ask people, but you say, do I make you feel safe? Right? And they may say yes or no, or how, you know, do I? And ask how. If they say yes, say, how do I do that? Do that more. If they say no, say, how do I not do that? It becomes really, because again, people will be able to tell you very clearly when they don't feel safe around you.
So often language plays such a huge role in this, right? Because you know, certain triggers, certain words, so again, notice when some of the language that creates triggers as well, and that safety, you know, and you know, you talk about when you're in the light energy of a masculine, you know, that certainty and that empathy and all those beautiful things. But if I'm in my dark, and I'm again, intelligence is low, emotion is high, and some of the things I say from that place, I would never intentionally want to say, but I can see safety being removed in a millisecond. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, if you ask a woman, do you feel safe with this person? She'll be able to tell you every time. And it's usually immediate, right? I could walk in a room, or even think of people in my life, and I can go, yep, no, right? It's just such a clear category for me of who creates safety and who doesn't. Right?
Or funny, you often see it with kids, right? Strangers or kids of friends will gravitate naturally to people who have that ability to make people feel safe, right? And it's kind of interesting because you say, "Oh, go and sit on Uncle Tommy's knee," and the kids are like, "No, I don't want to." And it's like,
or they say, "Hug everybody goodbye," and you're like, "I don't want to," right? It's like, hug who you want, right? Or don't. You're right. Okay, so let's go to the masculine. So in all the ways that we talked about the feminine, that safety is important. The fastest way to send the masculine to the dark side is to steal the freedom. And as you know, you and I've talked about this a lot. And again, it's usually immediate for the masculine as well. And again, think of all the ways. And again, women, you know, who I coach are like, oh, like, you know, he's free. He can do whatever he wants. He can go, you know, hang out with his friends and go golfing, and he's got tons of freedom, right? But again, the physical aspect actually is probably the easiest way to fulfill this formula. It's the nuances of that emotional, intellectual, you know, that stuff. That's way more challenging, you know. And you know, the example I often use when I'm asked, you know, if you want to see if you're you really, you know, giving freedom is, you know, do you tell men how and when to do something? You know, so this is very applicable to couples. You know, do you say, okay, I need this done now, and I need it done like this?
Yeah, take the garbage out, for example.
Yeah, then take the garbage. I need your garbage stand. I need it taken out right now. I need it positioned in this part of the sidewalk, and like it's just so constrictive, right? Versus, hey, it's garbage day Thursday. Can you take care of that? Which is much different than I need to take the garbage out right now and put it beside the 6 inches from the curb. So the freedom for the masculine is, again, so important. It's about allowing them to decide that how and when, allowing the masculine to sort of figure out how things look like and how things get done. I mean, I can, again, back to our book of how to ruin a good relationship. But to be critical of something, you know, you do, like, say if my husband does something for me around the house and I criticize it, I'm like that's as good as job you can do of that. You know, if I say he's done a crappy job, I don't know, whatever it might be, I can't think of, washing the floors or something. Let's say he doesn't wash the floors, you know, and I'm like, it's pretty lousy, or the laundry's not folded right, or the dinner is kind of crappy, like that's what you came up with for dinner. Anything like that is just, you know, you might as well just say, like, why did you even bother? So if you want to demotivate someone really quick, it's to criticize how they did something, or tell them exactly how you want to do it, which, again, when you think about it in the energy department, is just really controlling.
Yeah.
Right? I know that.
You know, if you use the example with the guy sitting watching a game, for example, and we're using a guy, girl, again, regardless of what kind of couple.
Yeah. Insert whatever feels like your relationship.
Same sex. I'm not trying to sort of distinguish it, but let's say the guy's sitting watching the game, and one of the energies is sitting watching the game, and the wife's like, hey, it's garbage day. You know, can you take the garbage out? Now he's watching the game. Now in his mind, you know, he's thinking, well, yeah, I'll take it out. It's not till tomorrow at 10, and I'm watching the game. But that's a great example of where she may be expecting it done now and done a certain way. And in his world, it's like, I'll do it, right? So that's that impediment. And so if she pushes him now, or that's where this move to the dark, because now he's going to do it begrudgingly and kind of, you know, it's going to piss him off. Right?
Yeah.
So, anyway.
And he will resent her. He will resent her because, and in that moment where you demand it how you want it done, you automatically set up a lose-lose situation. Because if he does it for you, he's now he's acquiesced, right? Now he's actually going to be running submissive, feminine, dark energy. Because he's like, no, I gotta do everything my wife says when she says jump.
Happy wife.
Right? So now he's moved and he'll do it for you. But again, he loses because he resents you. He feels emasculated. He's like, ugh. But then if he doesn't do it, he also knows he's gonna pay. Because then guess who goes to the dark side?
He goes on the dark side.
He does.
Now she's being
right? She's like, you know, you're such an asshole. You're not helping me. You're not. And she has this big freak out. And he's like, so he has to weigh out. You know, who do I, you know, move to the dark side here? Me or her? Either I acquiesce or I refuse on her terms and wait for her to get bitchy. So often men will go, I'll just do it, and so I don't have to deal with it. But that's not good.
Well, I was going to say, what you can find is, you see this, and I see it a lot, is where they end up living in that house. That sort of light, not light, but that sort of dark, feminine, submissive place. And every time you're around them, I've got friends like that. But when they're around their wife, it's like they lose their voice. They can't dress themselves. They can't do anything. It's like, yeah, honey, I'll do it. But they feel empty. They feel like they're just not the sort of the soul's missing almost, right? And you can almost see that the attraction from the woman's point of view, she's not attracted to him anyway because he's running submissive and she doesn't want a submissive man.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they get trapped in these
totally
two worlds,
true. Right? Again, it's a very bad, and again, we talked about how women, if they become in that submissive place, it can feel like they're in an abusive relationship. And the same is true for men, where they can feel in that, very controlled, submissive place. And you're right, it's not healthy for anyone. It's not healthy for her, and it's not healthy for him. And just a lot of resentment gets built up. And so like people are like, well, what can I say if I don't want to like do it immediately if I'm being asked? And and the right response is says, absolutely, I'll take care of it. And then you might say right after the game, right? Unless it is something like, is the garbage truck coming in 5 minutes? Then yeah, I'll get up. But if it's not, you're like, yeah, I'll take care of it before whenever is the timeline. Just say, yeah, I'll take care of it.
I got it.
Right now,
remember that. I got it.
Right now, it's second quarter. I'm here. Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyways,
so stealing the value, moving from the dark, the three mistakes, stealing the highest value. Do you want to get into the currencies?
Yes. Yeah. So the third is the currency. So the mistake you make is that you pay in the currency you want. So that's really the mistake. And so what I mean by that is that we all have this sort of ways that we like to get paid in relationships. And what we tend to do is want to get paid in the way that we like to get paid, in the currency that means the most to us. And so, of course, we think of currency in terms of money, but this is really relational currency that we're talking about here. And again, as no surprise, it's a difference between the masculine and the feminine. We don't want the same currency. So, and I would just like to use it as an example. Like, let's say you're a big, like for me, I love books. I've got lots and lots and lots of books. I love books, like collecting them. And of course, I also tend to give lots of books because I love them so much. So, I think of how many people have I've given a book that is, gone to their garage sale or never read, never cracked, because I'm giving what I love, which is not necessarily what they love. So that's kind of how we fall into this relationship pattern. And so the currency for the feminine is connection and protection. Those two things mean more to the feminine than any gift, like we can go into the whole love languages, any present, any, all the love languages and all the things might be ways that you weave in the connection and protection, but really she wants to feel connected to you. She wants to feel safe with you. So the protection is another version of, how do you create that? Like, I got this, and protection.
You think of, the protection and the connection, you think about me as a protector, let's say, I would be running my light masculine.
Yes.
To be a protector. That's
which
where
is protective is a masculine characteristic.
Absolutely. Right. And so that, that safety, protection, and connection, even again, for me to be truly connected, then I will be living, I would be consciously in my light masculine box.
That's right. Because, present is the fastest way to be connected, is just to give someone your undivided attention, right? And you're right. Just, that protective energy where, this idea of you don't have to worry, and the feminine worries about everything, right? And we are, because part of the feminine brain is the spontaneous and multitasking, and our brains are always going around, right? That's part of the feminine, which is, fun. It makes us creative, it makes us passionate, it makes us spontaneous, and it makes us amazing, but it also can be crazy making, the way our brain works. And that idea, that strong masculine goes like, listen, I got this, you don't have to worry about this thing or whatever's going on. It's just so important to be able to know that connection is not broken. And, so let's talk about couples fighting, because, I've been talking, again, right now, people are going through whatever season of challenge. So right now we're in this COVID-19 season of challenge, but there's lots of seasons of challenges, let's be honest. So whenever you're through a season of challenge, one of the things that I'm really hearing a lot from people is this idea of when people are fighting and their husband kind of is freaked out and he wants to leave, right? Or he kind of shuts down emotionally, or he leaves physically the argument. The biggest concern from the feminine is, are we still connected? Is our relationship still matter? I know that you're mad at me, but we're okay. And that's why it's so important, even to say that if you're having a big fight with your spouse or your friend or whatever, and just say, I love you, but I just need a little time out right now.
Yeah.
I love you, but I feel like killing you right now. So I'm going to just take a little break. Or I'm going to say something I don't mean. I'm going to say something really hurtful and I don't want to hurt you. I just need a second. And that's really important because it says our connection matters, but there's something happening right now. I need to take a step back. And that's how you can maintain the connection, where you just have to worry about that the relationship is falling, because it's a very short leap from a fight to the woman thinking that our relationship is over.
I want to put into guys' minds listening, or the idea of when you've been in bliss, let's call it bliss, where your partner is really in their, let's say their highest light feminine energy, where sexy and there and open and willing and loving and all these kind of things, but sparkling. Think about when you've experienced that. And because I always say that this is where this formula is so brilliant, because when you've seen it, you'll notice that there was a tremendous connection going on, that you were feeling great. You were in your light masculine energy, and there was absolute safety. Right? Because Beth, I was going to talk about this. Like a lot of guys talk about, sex, and they'll say, oh, this isn't happening. Mm-hmm. But then you see that, a woman who's unsafe is never going to be open in the bedroom. Never. But a woman who feels completely safe, there is no boundaries. There are no rules. Everything's open. I'm not saying, but because the safety's there and the protection and connection's there, then that person physically, that physical connection, that intimacy is a whole other level. It's like a completely different animal, right?
Yeah, 100%, right? And you're right. And that's why these things aren't sort of, well, I can check this box, but not these two. That's why it's called the formula, because if you miss even one, it doesn't work. It falls apart, and you're not going to ever have that 10 out of 10 relationship, whether intimate or otherwise. If you're missing any of these elements, it's not going to happen. And that's why they're really critical. And that's why as you're listening, thinking, again, come back to your partner, your person that you picked, how connected, how protected do they feel by you? If the feminine, or if it's the masculine, let's go to the masculine. And the currency of the masculine is appreciation and trust. Appreciation and trust. And I know we live in this modern world, and maybe we could do a whole show on even like the sort of the levels of relationship probably next. But this idea though that in this modern world, I see so many women in particular, because I coach a lot of, high achieving entrepreneurial women running their own businesses, killing it out there in the world, amazing. But they're so afraid to allow, and it's really an allowing appreciation for men in their life. They feel like somehow it makes them look weak if we let him take care of us, or we let him be kind to us, we let him open a door. Somehow it means we're back in 1950, housewives. And the opposite is true. It's about, I really, for people listening, want you to think about creating sort of synergy in our relationships, where there's this beautiful play of these characteristics and this formula that we're talking about, because that's really when the magic becomes. Because when you start appreciating your partner, again, remember we told you the way to really kill a relationship is to be as critical as you can. So if you want a better relationship, start appreciating. What can you appreciate versus criticize? Like, even use that washing the floor example. Let's say they washed the floor, it was terrible, like you can actually see the mud streaks. You can still say, thank you so much for washing the floor. Thank you so much for making this dinner. I don't care if they went to McDonald's and brought takeout. It's they tried to serve, and you just say thanks for creating a meal.
Well, I know this will sound kind of weird maybe, but I was thinking that we all want to be Tarzan, right? Oh, at some level, and go, even if you're bringing food home, we're not hunter gatherers anymore, but
No.
those small things, opening the car door, all those tiny steps. When somebody looks at you and says thank you, honey, thanks so much, or there's that little snuggle, it is that you can feel the currency working. But it really is it's such a simple, when you think about it, such a simple thing. But I think about that masculine, like, protector. You want protection. Well, let me feel like I can protect you. Allow me to do these things for you. But again, the currency coming back, I just know how it feels. Thanks, babe. Or
totally. And again, it needs to be sincere. Obviously, that's really important. Like, I don't teach this formula for people to be manipulative with it, because it doesn't work. Because again, that has a dark energy to it. So you can't appreciate if you don't mean it. So the sincerity is really important. You can't go, oh, like, well, or and the tone, right? You can't say thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
It's different from saying thank you. I really appreciate that. Even if it was a hot mess, the effort, it doesn't matter. What you're thanking them is their effort, not the perfection of the floor or whatever they're doing. And you're right. It's like that peacock. It is like that warrior. And again, I would, encourage you to practice this with strangers. If you don't believe me, take a perfect stranger and shower this formula on them.
Oh.
Like going out, we're not doing it right now, but the best way to do it is at restaurants. Servers and house cleaners and flight attendants are these, beautiful unsung heroes out there in the world that are always serving us and are often treated terrible by people. And you would be amazed at when you are, and you and I know, like, so we go for lots of meals together, and we always have the most fun with our server, or they become part of the, our family almost. By the time we're done, we know all about them. But it's about, being present with them and just going, giving them appreciation, or giving them, connecting with them, asking their name. It's so easy to do this with a perfect stranger. And it's so rare, unfortunately, that they just, as you can see the person blossoming in front, like they just open. And that's really the point of the formula.
That's the power of it. I just want to let everyone know we are running over time.
Sorry.
I should no. I deliberately, we said that we would. So this may be a lot longer show. Normally it's 45 minutes, but I just feel that I really want to make sure we give this all it needs so that you can grasp it. But if you've got the formula right now and you want to leave the show because you've got other stuff to do, we get it. But we will be wrapping this up soon. But I think there's some more things to talk about. But let's go back to the power of this. If consciously you're utilizing the formula, and consciously, if you want to take one of them away and notice what happens, right? I mean, just that one little thing. You can have everything there, but you take one of those away. Take one of the safety items away. That's a great one. Just remove one safety item, and then that uncertainty will then dwell, and you're going to see that sort of person move into a darker energy. And it could be a more fear-based. It may be worry. It may be any of those, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, or it might even be late. Like I said, with women, when I see women, they'll move, but it could be to any part of that quadrant. And that's why we're seeing so many women running a lot of masculine energy. Is what they're really doing is trying to create their own safety.
Right.
Right. But if they get every bit, every need made by themselves, then there really isn't any need for you. So that's why you can, create this and say, let me take care of this. Let me handle this. And again, you both can be, we're not talking just financial. You both can be great financial contributors to your household, but it's just these little ways that you can change the dynamic.
Can I add from a same-sex point of view, how just the thought on that? So if we're in a same-sex situation, typically one is, what for my experiences, and I have a lot of gay friends, that one seems to run more masculine than the other. Is that
Yeah.
something you notice a lot, or?
Yeah, again, I think it comes back to that, just knowing what your kind of home, what is your home place where you feel your best at, what energy, and a lot of people will say, well, and it's not necessarily the one you've been defaulting to. It's really, where do you feel your absolute best? And once you know that, then you can kind of plug in the formula and share that with your partner of what part of that formula feels the best for you. And so that's why I love it, is because it invites couples to have a different conversation. So instead of the conversation like, we're gonna have the airing of grievances and I'm gonna give you the litany of things that I'm really disappointed in you at, instead it can be like, what does this look like for you? What energy do I run around you, when you really feel attracted to me? Do I create safety for you, or is it important that I create freedom? And how do you like to see appreciation? How do you like, and then you can get into the hows with the people that you love, and I don't know anybody who wouldn't appreciate the question that says, how can I love you better?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about that on the show too. That was two questions that you asked, which were really beautiful. Which was, what was that? How do I pull you? How do I push you away?
And what pulls you closer?
What pulls you closer to me? I mean, it's such, again, the same type of thing, but to be that clear. And I really want to sort of ask for somebody who maybe is running a lot more dark energy. Yep. So they find themselves, in that kind of pity party victim kind of energy, because that's really below the line typically, right? And that's typically because they're feeling unsafe. But and masculine or feminine, what's some steps? How do we start using the formula? What's a great starting place where they've just heard it, they've written it down, and now, let's say that we're going to take sort of first steps. So what's your suggestion? How do we start moving with this?
Yeah. Well, the simplest, which frankly is not to be confused with easy, the simplest step is kind of how we began this call, which was when we talked about taking 100% responsibility. So the very first step you should do as you're listening to this thing thinking, oh gosh, I'm making some of these mistakes, is to, first of all, forgive yourself and your person for not knowing better. So, when we know better, we can do better. So you can say, okay, I forgive myself for making all the mistakes that we talked about today. And then the second thing is to say, so use the I am not going to wait for them to change. I'm not going to demand, I'm not going to ask them to do anything. I am going to go first. And so that's step 2, is to say, I'm going to start practicing this formula myself. Now, you might be in a relationship where you both can go, well, I'm going to practice it at the same time. But so many relationships are not willing to do that. They're not both at the table. They're not both willing. They're both conscious. Some might be really in that dark place. So the first step, though, is to say, I'm going to go first. And I would pick energy to practice. So it's about doing things that, excuse me, doing things that get you into the light. So again, that's nobody's job but yours, which, is a hard thing to hear sometimes, because we're always blaming our partner for putting us in a bad mood. And while they may influence our mood for sure, the only person that can really decide, if we're going to be happy, if we're going to be, whatever mood, and if you want some practice, just the first question you ask yourself when you wake up is how do I want to feel today, right? And most of us will not say miserable. Well, I'd love to be miserable. I'd love to be grumpy. I'd love to be really overwhelmed. Most of us will say, oh, I want to be happy, or I want to be peaceful, or I want to be calm, or I want to be inspired, or I want to be whatever.
Well, and the myth, I think that a lot of us are waiting for something to happen externally to bring us happiness, right? So whether, it's more money in a job or whatever, or in this, when we talk about relationships, what I found is when I take that responsibility, and, for everything in my life, everything not in my life, when I show up, say that you're looking to make some extra money or to build your business more, whatever it is, you wake up with that consciousness to say, hey, how do I want to feel today? Or how do I choose to feel today? Yes. And you really have an understanding of what light energy, where your home is in those four energies. So if you're running light masculine or light feminine, you're pretty sure it's in the lighthouse you feel the best. Pretty sure you may be in the habit of being in the dark space, and you may have friends who live there. And so you get in the habit, and it's really important to notice, when you're around people, which house do you go to more commonly? And I would say if you find that you're around people that always bring you into the dark, it's time to do something about that. But what I love about what you're saying, Beth, is that when I take responsibility for it, and I wake up, what happens externally, whether it's with my partner or with my job or with my friends or with my income, is because I'm so much lighter, things happen. Look where we go. I mean, like, no matter if we go to the airport, right? We never pay extra baggage because we're so kind to people. Restaurants, people bring us free drinks or they bring us free appetite or whatever. People are always going out of their way. They're bending over backwards to make our day special because we are conscious, or not always, but 90% of the time, 99% of the time, consciously wanting to live in the lighthouse. Let's call it the lighthouse.
Yeah, the lighthouse. I love that. Yeah. And it's so true. So that's really the first step, is just to wake up and decide, I'm going to live in the light, whatever side that is for you. And no matter what, and not allow, again, this is the practice, is not allow people who are around you that might be in the dark to affect your light. Because so often what we tend to do is demand, that the people around us that are in the dark to get to the light, or I can't tell you how many times I've coached a couple in this formula, and then they police each other. You're in the dark. Well, you're in the dark, and it's like, forget it. Just worry about yourself, because your best chance of getting the people around you, and certainly the person, that you put on the name down at the top of the call here, that person, the best chance to transform that relationship is if you go there first. That way you invite them to the light way more effectively than if you demand.
Well, and there's no doubt in my mind, right? When I am in my light, everything around me is affected.
Just like if you're all in your dark, everything's
when I'm in my dark, everything's infected, right? So I think that the idea that I can affect or infect, and I know that when I'm most effective and I have most things swinging is when I'm in that light place. But again, so let's go through a little recap. Or is there anything else you want to talk about before? Because as much time as you want. Let's recap the formula so that people hear it at the end again, and the homework, just so that we know exactly what we're doing. So let's go back to the formula itself.
Formula. So the E stands for energy, plus V stands for value, plus C stands for currency, and just is that. And then H, of course, stands for happy, or happily ever after, happy relationships, or hope, frankly. Whatever H you want to put in there. Because the truth is that if you are willing to apply this formula to the relationship, so that would be my challenge. So when you ask for a challenge, is that take that person and apply the formula to them. Like, really give it a college effort for the next however long you can do it. I like 30 days, maybe do it a week at a time if it's really toxic, but just see what happens if you decide that you're going to, show up with light energy. You're going to give them their highest value. You're going to shower them with the currency that they're craving from you, without any expectation, without any scorekeeping, without any demanding, without any whining, bitching, complaining. You're just going to give what that person has been craving for you, and just watch what happens. Just watch, without any, like I said, without any expectation or attachment to how they show up.
That's the expectation part, because the expectation is the thief of joy. It is the enemy, right? I just want to remind everyone then, so again, the highest value, safety, all right, for our women, and freedom for our men, and a currency. So safety, protection, and connection, and freedom, appreciation, and trust. So with that being said, Beth, any last words to our, we're obviously going to have a lot more conversations. There's so many, I've written down 3 new things we've got to talk about: levels of relationships, sex, elegant separations, finding your voice. We've got so many subjects that are coming up.
So many subjects.
Yeah. And we can talk about things outside of relationships as well. Anything you'd like to add? Any last thoughts? Any homework items for them?
No, I think everybody's got enough homework, but I just wanted to say, good luck. Good luck. Going first is, I think the last thing I want to say is that the most important influence in a relationship is you.
Awesome. With that being said, everyone, thank you for listening to the show today. Beth, thank you so much. Remember, this is all about my extra mile. It's those little tiny things that we can do on an incrementally consistent basis that will allow us to have greater choice, greater freedom, more juicy relationships, to increase our income, all these tiny little things, little steps we can take. So thank you for being on the show, and we will see you again very, very soon.